This for my north side,
Kiara,
south side,
Kiara,
east end,
Kiara,
west end,
Kiara,
for my H-town,
Kiara,
Seafield,
Kiara,
804,
Kiara,
we them real
Kiara.
niggas, yeah. 2 up, 2 down, rich town. 2 up, 2 down, rich town. 2 up, 2 down, rich town.
It's the Kiara Lee Show.
Rich town.
Welcome to the Kiara Lee Show, yet another episode. My name is Kiara Lee, and today we are talking about a very hot topic. Today we are talking about gay men in the black community. They say it's hard enough being a black male in this society, just being a black male. But the added pressures of, being gay and being a gay black male, it's an even tougher topic and it's an even tougher role. They say 1 in every 10 people identify as LBGTQ. So this is a topic that really can't be ignored because it affects a lot of people. And especially when the LGBTQ community has a large population of African Americans. They say a little over 4% of the LGBTQ community is African American. And about 4% are Asians and Hispanics, and a little more than 3 are Caucasian. So this is an issue that's really big in the black community, something that people don't like to talk about, but today we're here to talk about it and hash it out, as I always say. Today's guest, we have Kevin Grayson. He's a former University of Richmond football player that recently came out, and he's going to be here talking to us about his experience. And also later we'll hear from Chaz Barracks, who's also a University of Richmond alum. Right now he's an activist for gay rights, currently working in Japan, and he's founder of IamMyLife.org, a space online for people who identify as gay or people who are questioning their sexuality to come and to get support and to find resources. So Kevin, just tell us a little about yourself, a little about your background.
Okay, well, I'm Kevin Grayson, University of Richmond alum. Graduated in 2010. I also was a athlete, played football, wide receiver. I was also a member of the RCSGA. I was in the Academic Affairs Committee. Also was a co-founder of a student organization called You Are Men for Change. And also I was one of the founding fathers of the Lambda Chi Alpha chapter at University of Richmond. So.
Wow, so big things,
big things. A lot of things.
Mm-hmm. So when did you first know that you were attracted to men, or was it something you always knew, or was there a particular point in childhood where you realized this, or how did it come to you?
I think maybe about middle school was kind of the time where you start to understand emotions, feelings, things like that. Well, I know for my personal feelings is when I kind of started realizing it. I think, growing up, until you really start to understand how you feel, you don't really know. You just think it's normal. You just, you have an attraction, which when you're young, you have a lot of attractions to a lot of different things. But once you mature is when you kind of define what lifestyle you choose as far as what you like and what you dislike. So I would say around middle school is when I really started to question, what the type of feelings were and trying to understand them.
Okay. So how did you feel when you realized that you were attracted to men, when that was defined in you, that you knew, like, I am gay? How did you feel? Did you feel bad about it? Did you feel good about it? Did you feel it was wrong? Did you feel, how did you feel about yourself with that?
Well, it's interesting because, I'd had girlfriends, things like that. So the attraction to men, it wasn't, in my mind, I didn't really define as really gay at the time. It was just, I had attraction to both men and women. It really wasn't to the point where I had a full grasp of what, I was going to do as far as relationship and kind of sexuality. It just kind of grew as I, got older. I definitely, told myself I wasn't going to tell anyone, my 2 older brothers wasn't going to say anything to them, my family, that was probably the last thing on my mind, telling someone about it. I just figured I would explore on my own and find out about it. I wanted to keep it secret. And then, society, kind of downplays it. And so it was one of those things where, as far as playing sports, I just wanted to keep it under wraps and be able to live my life without scrutiny.
So you feel that if you would have told early on when you first knew, that would have brought trouble that would have caused problems, or how did you see that?
I definitely think that, in high school, it's one of those times where, I like to say it's a popularity contest. People make it about your image, and it follows you throughout. And I feel like, when you're that young, you're subject to more scrutiny and, more bullying, things like that. I was one of the bigger kids around, so I really didn't experience the whole bullying thing, but I knew if it got out, it was one of those things that I felt could hurt my sports. When I was in high school, I played basketball, football, track, and, I felt like if it got out, people start to look negatively at me, not accept that, I'm just like everyone else. I'm a sports guy, I go to class just like everyone else. I would have this stigma of the gay male or the gay athlete. So that's what I was trying to avoid.
Okay, very interesting. I just wanted to move to a statistic really fast. They say that about 20% of gay men are in heterosexual marriages, according to the Family Pride Coalition. Do you feel that the pressures are that strong where, like you said, you wanted to keep it under wraps because of the scrutiny? Do you feel it's the same way with marriage? Do you feel that the pressures are so strong and coercive that you should get married to cover it up, so to speak? Or what are your thoughts on that?
I do feel that some people feel that type of pressure in a different way. Personally, for me, it wasn't that way, but I do feel I've had friends who I know who have been in and out of marriages, and they said they really only got married because they couldn't handle the stress, the pressure that came from people starting to question them, things like that. And if you really don't have a support group that can help you through those tough times, it can really eat at you, and it can really affect you and cause certain problems for you where you feel like you need an outlet, and people are going to search for it the quickest way possible. And a lot of times marriage is kind of one of the quick things to say, well, hey, they can't be gay, they're married. So I do feel like a lot of people suffer from that type of pressure.
Okay. And you were married yourself at one point. So would you like to share your experience with that, or how did that play out? Or?
Well, with my particular case, it wasn't, anything dealing with, sexuality, basically. I was happily married. And it just, turned out that we just were doing separate things. Once I was going to play football, we were focusing on our separate careers, and it was stretching us apart. So, that's why I say sexuality in my case wasn't really a pressure. That was one of the least things that I was thinking about. Because, like I said, we were happily married, except, just distance in our careers were stretching us to two different, positions.
Okay. You mentioned a few things about football, about when you were playing football. Right. And I understand that at the time you confided in a few people. Right. You don't have to name any names, but I'm just saying, right. What made you confide in the people that you confided in? Well,
like I said, when you're going through those type of pressures, if you don't have, at least one person that you can talk to, and it makes it really hard. You feel like you have no outlet, and then it bottles up in you. So even in high school, I had certain teammates that you could tell just by talking with them that they would be okay with it. They wouldn't hold anything against me. They wouldn't have any doubts. And me as a person, I felt like they knew me well enough to where it wouldn't be a issue with them. Mm-hmm. And we would have conversation. It kind of helped educate them on kind of the stigma, I guess, that goes with being a homosexual male. That all homosexual males aren't feminine, and we can be athletes, and we can be a masculine man and still be gay. So I felt like for me that helped me personally, by having a support group that helped me along the way, where I wasn't feeling as much stress, getting depressed and things like that, feeling like I didn't have an outlet. I ended up telling my brothers, when I was playing football in Italy, I told my family via email. I didn't, so I didn't tell them in person. But that was one thing I never thought that I would tell my family. I never thought that I would get to that point. I just felt like I wanted to live my life and not be judged by my sexuality. I wanted to be judged by the content of my character, rather than have another stigma on top of me, rather than, being the black male athlete already. I didn't want to be the black male gay athlete. So I just, wanted to live life.
Do you feel that your experience at Richmond would have been different as a gay black man had you not played football?
Ooh. That's an interesting question. I do say that life would have been different, especially in terms of social life.
Okay.
Being an athlete at a university is already strenuous in itself, but then, being, a gay male in general, can have its, certain issues being at a university as well. You have people from all walks of life who aren't around, different cultures, sexualities, and they don't know how to basically cope being in those settings. So therefore, a lot of people come off negatively just because either they're scared or just, uninformed about, someone's religion, sexuality, etc. So I think my life would have been a little bit different had I not played sports. I think I might have been even more open with people, just due to my personality. I interact with almost everyone, no matter, where they're from or who they are. But I feel like I may have been, probably more of an activist in my community to help out. So I do say it would have been different, but I still helped out a lot, even though I was playing sports, which I got scrutiny from up and down. People were throwing out rumors and things like that. But, when I look back, I know that I was doing the right thing at that point in time. And being a notable athlete at the school, it brought more attention to certain topics and subjects.
Okay. All right. Did you feel pressure to live up to like the masculine football player, big, strong role, or how do you feel about that whole phrase I just said, like masculinity? How does that come into play with your experience?
And it's funny that you use the term masculinity because anytime you associate the word gay or homosexual, it's like people take away that word masculinity and they kind of put it down and bring up femininity as far as being a gay male. Just because you're a gay male doesn't mean that you cannot be masculine or that you cannot live a masculine lifestyle. Me personally, like, I'm an athlete. I'm a very hyper masculine person, and I had to make that known that by playing sports, it wasn't as if I was putting on a masculine show. That's just the man that I am. So that I feel like a lot of people go through that scrutiny as well, where, if you're masculine, then you're putting on like a mask and that, you can't be that way or you shouldn't be that way because you don't fit the stigma that society is putting on, the word homosexual or gay. And as far as, being an athlete, why can't I be a masculine gay athlete? Why can't I be a masculine gay man? It's it's stigmas that society places on, a group of people, which just because they place that stigma doesn't mean that we have to live up to their stigma.
That's very true. So in the Black community, like as I said earlier, it's hard enough being a Black man, but just imagine the added pressure and the added stress and just, the added stigma of being a gay Black man. How has the Black community received you since you're coming out?
Well, since coming out, it's been, the Black community has been very supportive. I've talked to people from across the nation. It's been amazing. A lot of people from New York, which is great. I've had a lot of new friends now. But on the flip side, before coming out, there's those stigmas that even the Black community places on, they use the term DL all the time on the down low, and that, you're afraid to come out and that you just want to, play both sides, and, they feel like it's a negative to, the community. And which, in my case, like I said, when you take about sports, they throw out, their criticisms and things, but, they have to put themselves in your shoes that if you were to come out or someone find out, then your career, is basically in jeopardy. And, most people are not going to jeopardize their careers for anything most times, because that's your life. You have to think about yourself first and then kind of a community or, people second. I tried to help as many people as I could, balance that, but, it's hard to take criticism and then, kind of give back because it's, kind of double negative. But ever since coming out, it's been pretty much, for the most part, positive. There's always going to be someone who has their criticisms or someone's going to have what they want to say, but, with the good, you have to take the bad, and you have to know what to pay attention to and what to ignore. And, like I said, with the support group, I've kind of matured myself to the point where I know who I am, I know what I want to do, and I'm not worried about those who are trying to hold me back.
Okay. I think it's very interesting that you said the Black community was supportive of you, and I'm glad that was
Right.
your experience. But a lot of other people, beg to differ. A lot of other people say that the Black community is one of the most strict communities
Right.
when it comes to tolerance for being gay. And as I said earlier, we have another guest with us virtually who's not here. He's in Japan. His name is Chaz Barracks. I asked him the same question about the Black community and how receptive they've been to him. He also identifies as a gay Black man, and he had something different to say about that. So we're going to go to a clip really quickly of what he had to say about how the Black community has received him.
I'd have to say the reaction is definitely kind of two-pronged. The number one is how they've reacted when it comes to being homosexual, being gay. And number two definitely has to do with the stereotypes and the belief that within the Black community that men are supposed to be kind of like strong and physically strong and more masculine and kind of tough. It's kind of like a Ford car. I think that has always been an issue with making Black friends and being comfortable with them and feeling like they were comfortable with me, with all of me. I think that the Black community has definitely been a little bit more intimidating. In high school, it was always harder to make friends with Black heterosexual men without feeling like they were kind of like standoffish, and there was always like a wall that we never cross. When it came to that, is that I think that a lot of Black guys are just uncomfortable. They're okay with the fact that you're feminine and that you're gay, but not near me or not in my house, or you can't sleep over. Or I think those things have always been a little bit more of a hurdle to cross for Black men. And it's also just been more intimidating. I think that more, my white friends are less concerned with my sexuality, and making white male friends has always been a little bit easier because I don't think they've ever really cared about, the fact that I don't act Black or or I'm not masculine enough, or it's always been more of a Black thing where I've kind of felt like I've been more intimidated by how I act when it came to befriending them compared to other cultures.
So that's what he had to say about the Black community, and I guess it really depends on your experience, because here we have Kevin, who really had a pretty positive experience with coming out to the Black community, and as Chaz didn't. So it's something that's definitely interesting to explore, but it's definitely something that the Black community can work on, which we'll talk about a little bit later. As you mentioned before, you had some friends, you said, that were living the whole DL, or down low. And for those that don't know what DL means, DL stands for down low, and it's pretty much a phrase to describe someone who is gay, who participates still in straight relationships or straight, activities, so to speak. So what do you think about that whole DL stigma with Black men? Because a lot of times Black men get thrown the shade of being DL, and it kind of the media has kind of coined it as an exclusively Black male issue. So what are your feelings on that?
That's the main thing, the way the media spins it, as if it's just a Black issue, that there isn't any other race that deals with this issue, when across the world it's an issue that a lot of men deal with, no matter what your race is specifically. But, it being thrown in the Black community, I guess, with it being portrayed that way, makes the Black community look negatively upon it, because it's looked down upon. Therefore, it's another thing that basically is looked down upon within the Black community, which gives us another bad stigma that, the outsiders can use, against us. And, within the Black community, I used to get that a lot. In high school, it was, oh, you're just on the DL and all this. And, I wanted to say, no, I'm just me. I don't like labels. I don't like being told who I am or what I'm doing as far as how I'm going to live my life, because a lot of people don't understand your life and what you're doing. And until they step in your shoes, they can't really, get the true feeling of why you have to do certain things. And I'm not saying that all people have reasons who are on the DL. Some people, they really are just, I feel like they're using certain things to get ahead. You know, I had a couple friends who I felt like were really giving it a bad name. You know, they were using people to get ahead when they thought they could, because they could be that straight male that, you know, a gay male wanted, and then, you know, they could kind of mix and match to get ahead. And that's when it's a negative. But as far as being on the down low, you know, most gay males who do not want to be scrutinized against and don't want to be, you know, just subjected to hate are basically on the down low. That's basically how I see the term. If you're on the down low, you are basically, you're not hiding, but you are kind of hiding because you don't want to be subjected to hate, bullying, things like that. And, you know, in my case, I played sports. So, you know, I had friends, you know, I was one of the bigger kids around, especially high school and college, where, you know, I wasn't subjected to that type of, you know, hate or pressure, but I knew people who were. And, you know, that's why a lot of times, you know, I felt bad because, you know, then I couldn't really help out, you know, because then if I did something, you know, then I would say it would be outing myself. But, you know, after I got over that later in high school, you know, I helped friends out, you know, with bullying, things like that. But, you know, it's those type of stigmas that really turn a community against itself.
Very interesting. So you see the whole DL concept as more of a protective sort of thing versus a misleading sort of thing.
Right. That in my particular case, I would like to say that's the majority of why people do it. But I will also say on the flip side, there are those who take advantage of it. So.
Okay. And I know, again, you said that coming out to the Black community wasn't so hard, or you didn't have a lot of difficulties with it, so to speak. But do you feel like in general your experience would have been easier had you been not a Black male that's gay? Like if you would have been a Caucasian male that was gay, or an Asian male that was gay. Do you feel like it would be easier if you weren't Black? Or just in general, do you feel like it'd be easier for men if they, you know?
You know, I feel like, well, I'll start with the racial side of it. I guess in society, the way it is, you know, I don't want to say it's easier to be a Caucasian male, but I will say it's definitely, you know, throughout history, it's harder to be an African-American male in the U.S. So I would say the coming out process it's tough, I would say, no matter what racial background you're from. But given the setting of where you grow up will make it easier. If you're in a more accepting culture, then it's going to be easier. So I won't say the coming out process is easier, particularly in a racial sense. I would say more into a kind of way that you're brought up. You know, a lot of people in religious families aren't so apt to come out. But if you're in a more welcoming, you know, family or a welcoming state, you know, if you're growing up in California, something like that, which is more accepting of, you know, homosexuals, then you'd probably be living in a family that's more apt to accept you just for who you are. And that's why hearing stories about, you know, parents who disown their kids and things, you know, this is your child, you know, how can you disown, you know, your child, you know, that's, you know,
blood.
that's, and I don't get that. And I feel for friends that I have who've had to deal with that. But as far as stretching it to sports and non-sports, I'll say that way, I definitely believe it's harder to be a gay Black male who is not in a sport than in a sport. Like I said, specifically for me, playing sports and being a notable athlete overshadowed anything else. Usually my sport overshadowed most negativity that could be thrown my way, even with, you know, homosexual rumors. You know, a lot of people, oh, not Kevin, he plays football, basketball, track, things like that. So I definitely would say that because of sports, you know, I got help even when, you know, I didn't ask for it. You know, I had teammates who would shoot it down. I mean, but as far as, you know, gay males who are not playing sports, it's harder because, you know, you really have to, number one, I guess, either hide yourself. Number two, pray that you're not going to be subjected to hate and different things like that, because already being a Black male, you know, depending on where you're at, you're already going to be subjected to hate. But then if you're a gay Black male, then it's even more. I mean, you have a double negative placed on you. So it's you know, it's I would say it's harder to be a non-athlete black man than it is to be a gay black athlete in certain aspects.
That's very interesting. And as we were talking to Chaz earlier, who is a gay black man that isn't an athlete, we're going to check in with him one more time. He talks about suggestions for the black community as far as how we can be more accepting of our brothers who identify as gay. And so we're going to check in with him one more time right now.
As a black community, I think that we need to kind of break down our like harsh stereotypes or harsh roles when it comes to being straight and being gay. I think that the black community needs to try to be more outgoing, try to be less intimidating with our roles of being straight and with being gay. And I think that we need to just become more accepting. I think that the black community, sometimes it feels like I don't fit in because of the way that I act, or because I'm gay. I think that we need to be more outgoing and be more diverse as an African American community with our definitions of a man. And I think that we need to have more dialogue about why a lot of heterosexual black men may be uncomfortable. That's always been something that has questioned me a little bit too. And I think it's very different between black men and black women of how they accept and don't accept homosexuals.
So we heard from Chaz again, and as he said, if the black community could be a little more accepting of our differences, the differences among each other, we could all be better off. Just want to end on a last note. Just want to ask you, Kevin, for the man that's watching that might be contemplating coming out, or the man that's watching that's frustrated with the stigma he's receiving for being gay and identifying as gay, what advice would you give him? I want you to look into the camera and tell the world, what advice would you give those who are struggling with this right now as we speak?
Okay, my advice for those who are struggling with this issue, first and foremost, find those closest to you who can personally accept you for who you are. A support group, I believe a support group is probably the top thing that every person needs dealing with this specific type of issue. It has greatly helped me continue to grow coming up through high school and college, and even now being an adult. Past that, educate yourself on certain things that are going on. A lot of times, no matter where you go, a lot of people aren't going to accept you because that's just how they are. You cannot change everyone, but I would say be true to yourself and always know that no matter who is against you, you can accomplish your goals, your dreams, as long as you set yourself mentally in a certain standpoint saying that no matter what happens, I'm going to accomplish A, B, and C, then you dictate your future. But it is a lot harder to do it when you're dealing with all these different types of issues, but definitely start out with a support group.
Okay. Well, thank you, Kevin. We've enjoyed having you on here, and that's another episode of the Kiara Lee Show. Stay tuned. Thank you.
This for my north side,
Kiara.
south side,
Kiara.
east end,
Kiara.
west end,
Kiara.
for my H-town,
Kiara.
Seafield,
Kiara.
804,
Kiara.
we them real,
Kiara.
yeah, 2 up, 2 down, Rich town, 2 up, 2 down, Rich town, 2 up, 2 down, Rich town,
It's the Kiara Lee Show.
Rich town.